Hi everyone, SGD here. The Overdress Starters Key cards have been shown over the past few weeks, and I wanted to take the time to talk about each of these decks. There's some fun stuff here, and there's some stuff that will be better when it's expanded upon. That's something important to note. Apparently Vanguard's team intends to build upon the bosses in these decks, not just leave them in the dust. I wonder what that means for future product though. If they intend to revise these decks annually to keep the bosses in circulation. Before I get started, I want to talk about the Persona Ride as it's been fully explained. Persona Ride is replacing the gift system, but is significantly slower. When you ride over a unit with a Persona Ride with another copy of that same card, as the name Persona Ride would imply, you draw a card and gain a static 10,000 buff to your front row. This is attached to your Vanguard, not the unit themselves, so if one comes in, it's bathed in the floating effect. I love this idea. It's simple but elegant. I feel it really capitalizes upon Vanguard's stronger suits. It keeps the importance of the Grade 3 by utilizing the Persona concept and gives every deck a built-in way to make that push for gain. Riding always feels good, and it's a ride mechanic. It's also kept in line because of its nature as not only a pseudo Grade 4, but Persona. There's only 3 shots at it in the deck without direct support. In theory, it just seems like it feels good. It covers a lot of bases and is practical. As has been shown with the Stoichia deck, it can be built upon too. It can be fully morphed into a Break Ride equivalent. I think it's a really ingenious design. Anyway, let's get started with Yuyu's Dragon Empire deck. The Dragon Empire deck feels like it's for very new players. It's remarkably basic, and as a consequence, more than a bit boring. Big power, rare skills, it's got a lot in common with the original Royal Paladin structure than anything. Just a bit more cohesive. The big mechanic for the deck is Overdress, essentially an evolution mechanic, or riding rearguard. But even that's dull. It's just more power. It's got potential and I want to see where it goes. I think it's really cool. But it's not interesting as displayed here. The boss and order help recover it from the drop, the boss powers it up, and the actual mechanic is just a power-up. Now, due to how everything works and wording, we're going to get different Overdress cards. What seems to be a Grade 3 Virena is on the cover of DB2012, Virena Valiant. So, Virena will overdress further. I get the deck isn't for me. I'm not a kid fresh into Vanguard. But this deck desperately needs that first set to expand it, up its complexity, and enhance its capabilities. I could imagine a kid playing against one of the other decks and wondering why their deck is so boring compared to their friends' decks that are so much more engaging. Danji's Dark States deck is obviously Spark Brothers themed and feels like a mishmash of Dudley Emperor from the Limit Break era and the charge mechanic of the G era. It's very different, but similar. The keyword mechanic is Final Charge, a state of being for the turn that is initiated when you have a Vanguard with Final Charge at the start of your ride phase. So when you start your turn as Bruce, you are in Final Rush. Final Rush then unlocks other abilities, such as Bruce's own to pay 5 Soul Blast and restand 2 of your rearguard. Very similar concept to Dudley Emperor, where you use Superior Call 2 units to make those 5 attacks. Like how Dudley Emperor had Juggernaut Maximum, High Speed Bracky and Reckless Express, Bruce has Richard and Steve. Both gain plus 5,000 while you are in Final Rush. You also have Time Treasuring Colossus, which really wants to be used with Bruce. On-call Soul Charge 1, so setup, then Counterblast 1 to gain 15,000 power for the turn. That's a ton of force for Bruce. Bruce isn't even hard to set up for multiple turns. His orders Soul Charges 2, Acrobat Presenter Soul Charges up to 2, and Persona Ride provides Soul. Persona plus Colossus is an amazing amount of power. Native 3 souls, Steve and Richard give you an additional soul when used in tandem. I don't think it's hard to get Bruce's big push twice. One thing that isn't really relevant, but I really like, is the naming. I think it's fun to have really normal names, like Bruce, Steve, Matt, and Richard. It just tickles me for some reason. I'm so used to cards with these big, bombastic, fantastical names, or non-Western names. Having just run-of-the-mill names is fun. I really like this deck. It's got a lot going on, it feels cohesive and engaging. It looks like a lot of fun, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how Final Rush is used to give it more capabilities. Toya's Key to Sanctuary deck feels very much like Yuyu's Dragon Empire deck. It's terribly underwhelming, but I'd say you can feel the potential here more clearly. The theme is Grade 3, and the deck has a lot of them. 12 units, 4 orders, for a total of 16 Grade 3. Apex Ruler Bastion harkens back to the original trial decks of 2011 by being a Grade 3 checker. Now this is much better with the Ride deck and being able to pack 15 Grade 3 in a deck, because the chance to check a Grade 3 with 15 of them is about the same as checking a trigger on Twin Drive, 55%. This means your cumulative chance to Twin Drive into anything is about 85%, nearly a sure thing. Bastion also gives your Grade 3 plus 2,000 power, including himself, so with their base stats and a booster with a base of 8,000, they're swinging for 3 stages. Bastion's actual check effect is a take on Asura Kaiser. Once a turn when you check a Grade 3, pitch a card to stand a rearguard and have it gain plus 10,000 power. Many have said this feels underwhelming, and I'm inclined to agree. Not because the end result is bad, it's not. It's the discard. The deck already has a low count on shield, and quite a few cards want Grade 3 across the front row. There isn't an ideal discard option. Further than that, both the rearguard Grade 3 feel very underwhelming. One costs counterblasts, and the other puts itself into the soul for an effect. Neither feels like even Palamedes good. Even the order is meh. CB2 for draw 2 and plus 5,000 power. Theoretically worth it, but underwhelming. More so without countercharge. The best lower grade card is the Grade 2 Rooks, which becomes a 15,000 booster with a full front row of Grade 3. Fort is fine for the Vanguard boost, but the on-ride effect needing 2 Grade 3 in hand is highly impractical. Runs counter to Bastion too. I could see replacing it very early on. As I said, Key to Sanctuary feels a lot like Dragon Empire. It needs the set to expand upon it. Grade 1 that produce more shield, Grade 3 that do something worthwhile on rearguard. It needs something. Megumi's Stoichia deck is a mishmash of themes and mechanics. Mechanically, it's got the most in common with Aqua Force, but visually, it's more of a raw animal theme. Great Nature gutted of the school gimmick. Magnolia allows a unit in the back row to attack and gives it plus 5,000 power, enough to threaten a Vanguard before triggers. Then, if you Persona Road that turn, you can choose 3 rearguard to gain that ability instead. I really like Magnolia. It's a fantastic design. Base application of having your 4 attacks a turn. You could also just use it to gain the plus 5,000 power to beef up a column. And it has a finisher packed on the card too, via Persona Ride. It simply does everything. Then the deck supports Magnolia in a satisfactory way. Duga gives you a nice power buff, allowing it to hit Vanguard solo. While it's a bit more restrictive than I like, these cards are imperative to this playstyle. Charis is direct support for Magnolia, being a base 13,000 attacker in the back row. Lattice can turn into a 20,000 base attacker in the back row for minimal cost. Both have an on-ride +1 attached, but they're circumstantial and can result in you fielding triggers. I don't like that prospect. While it's fine behind Magnolia for most of the game if all of your triggers are base 5,000 power, when you push into final turn, It's only 10,000 power, and after they've had a chance to intercept. Yeah, you can pass trigger power down there, but that's relying on a coin flip chance. I think there are some ways you can make it work, mainly to do with utilising power buffs to achieve normal numbers, then using Persona Ride and switching positions to make use of Final Turn, but it's convoluted and suboptimal. I think the +1 of Charis might be the only one I'd aim for, as it doesn't cost resources, and one use has far less potential to clog up the field. I suppose if Charis goes alright, you can risk Lattice. It's a really situational thing, play by ear. Nevertheless, I really like Stoichia. I like the aesthetic, I've always liked animal decks, but this brings in a playstyle I'm super fond of. Do I miss stand triggers? Yeah, but stands aren't coming back. I've accepted that. I do really like what's on offer though. Tamari's Bryan Gate deck is by far the most complex, most interesting, and most original deck of the 5. Frankly, I'm rather surprised they haven't delved into this design space before. The deck revolves around its order card, a new type of order card called Set Order. It's essentially a field card. This one is themed around a prison, and its subtype is just that, prison. Your effects send your opponent's cards to the jail, and your opponent must pay bail to get them out. While the function is somewhat like a mishmash of bind and lock, it's the end result that I'm far more interested in. Your opponent pays costs, diverting their resources away from using their effects. It's actually like an improved Mega Colony Stun, in a way. Mega Colony Stun essentially is a pseudo-lock. Losing momentum, or your opponent can take it as a kill and replace them, costing them hand. They can just intercept if you stun a grade 2 though. Here, they can't intercept, and it's not time-based, it's cost-based. With some strategy and a lot of luck, you can theoretically render your opponent's deck vanilla via resource denial, not unlike how people used to deny Limit Break. Decks like Dark States and Stoichia will likely have to play with this in mind. They can't just fill the board, aim for face. If they don't OTK, they're going to lose too many resources. This gets even more interesting with cards like Risat Pink, who imprison cards from the hand, moving the deck into Nubatama territory, softening them up for big pushes. Big pushes made bigger because the deck gets stronger with cards imprisoned. Its boss, Seraph Snow, becomes a 23,000 triple driver with 3 cards imprisoned. Considering she does 2 herself, not the hardest thing in the world. I don't know why messing with your opponent's resources hasn't been a thing before, especially since they've basically covered every other form of control, but I really like it. I think Bryan Gate looks frustrating to go against, but a lot of fun to play. Probably not for everyone, but I like it. I never expected to say this, but I'm planning on buying Vanguard Overdress in May. I love what I'm seeing, and Booster Road is making all the right decisions. Not just for them, or for the stores, but for all 3 parties involved. Them, the stores, and us, the player. Everything is just sitting right, and the changes to the game are positive. The people behind it are continuously building confidence in the product, and the shift to focusing on higher rarities, being variants over necessities, is something all games should be doing in my opinion. I also really appreciate how the 5 decks, depending on their themes, arguably hit different demographics. Knights and dragons for kids, animals and demons for teens, waifus for the waifu fans. To be perfectly honest, between all the games launching this year, I think Vanguard Overdress is by far the strongest and has the best chances of sticking. I think the overall design is either interesting or has a lot of potential. I hope the follow-up is just as good. The priorities of the team behind it seem to be in the right place, a balance of profits, sustainability, and quality game experience. Vanguard Overdress is getting me to seriously reevaluate my priorities as to other games. We'll be talking about that later though. I need some time to think about things. This has been Some Gamer Dude. Thanks for watching.